The draft is over. The free agent primer is done for now. It's time to do a deep dive on who the Cardinals drafted with Damien Parson from Lockon NFL Draft. Let's go.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Funny, right out the gate, I never say let's go. Everybody says it. I'm like, that's not going to be me. It's not going to be me, but it was me there. I don't know. Maybe Damien Parson brought it out of me. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on so you can see my big dumb face. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it. I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. You may recognize this face from 10 days ago. Damien Parson from Locked On NFL Draft and the Draft Network, one of the most plugged-in guys in the business. Happy that he's a part of our Locked On family, so I can just punish him by having him come on 2 times in 10 days. Dame, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll talk Darius Robinson. And then I want to break up day 2 and day 3 with somebody who's an encyclopedia with this kind of stuff. If you didn't watch the last one on YouTube or listen to it wherever you get your podcast, I gave him the third segment, just said, go. Give me names that I don't know. And he talked for like 7 minutes. It's exactly what I wanted. This dude's just an encyclopedia. At DP_NFL on Twitter. You were right about Marvin Harrison Jr., okay? The mock draft had him rolling his eyes at me. I was doing it more of as an exercise for the trade back. Monty Osborne kept it basic. He kept it easy. He drafted 2 impact players that we're going to break down now. So now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is officially an Arizona Cardinal, how much better day 1 does that make the Cardinals with a rookie wide receiver 1?
I think it elevates this offense substantially, right? Because this is, and you know, don't get me wrong, I love Roma Dunze. I love Malik Neighbors and what they bring. For me, when I watched Marvin Harrison Jr., I saw a professional wide receiver. I saw a young man that understood how to attack angles against any type of alignment and coverage. I saw a young man that understood how to defeat double teams, right? You know, you go back to the first game of 2022, they played Notre Dame, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was coming off of a historic bowl game that January where he had like 350 yards receiving against Utah. That was the guy everybody expected to be the bell cow receiver, the wide receiver 1. They're on the same field, and Notre Dame says we're doubling Marvin Harrison Jr. right out the gate, right? Yeah. Marvin's at the X, and Marcus Freeman says we're taking him away. As great as JSN was and is a good player and a great player, we had to take away that top guy, and that was Marvin. And I remember watching that, and I was like, okay, the respect was shown immediately, and that was before he actually got into that season. That's game 1, night 1. So like watching him like understand that sometimes I'm not going to be able to get the ball because teams are going to do everything to take me away, right? He's a coverage puller. So when he steps onto the field, he understands that most defenses are going to try and take me away immediately. And with this run game, with the emergence of Trey McBride, listen, Dortch is such an underrated receiver in the NFL. I just love Greg Dortch in his game as a slot receiver, as a route runner, run after catch, quick twitch type of guy. Michael Wilson, you know what I mean? Him staying healthy, he could play a kind of big Z. But all these guys, especially Marv and Mike, they are interchangeable in terms they can move around. Where Mike can go to the X, Marv goes to the Z. Either one can go into the slot and create matchups against smaller nickel defenders, right? Especially with teams liking to throw a smaller safety down into the nickel because he can cover. Yeah, I feel really good about Marvin Harrison Jr. against most safeties in one-on-one coverage. So I think the opportunities and the potential is limitless with this addition, because still yet, and we saw the theme of this draft. And I remember saying it when we did videos for the Draft Network, kind of grading the Arizona Cardinals draft class. What I loved is that Drew Petzinger, Monty Austin-Ford, Jonathan Gannon, they prioritize good players and physicality. This is a team you're not going to be able to run over this Cardinals team. You couldn't run over them last year. Did they have the talent to be able to withstand the battle? No, not last year. It was a transitional period, going from a bad regime to now a good one. And this draft showcased that for me. Like, they got physical and they got strong at every position they needed to. So I think adding Marvin Harrison Jr., you're getting a situation where he's going to pull coverage. Kyler, and just watching the video of Kyler at home, standing in front of the TV, waiting to hear Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name, you know that QB1 is excited to start throwing the ball down the field to him because he gives him that catch radius, the athleticism at the catch point, the body control. I remember talking to a DB. He's like, man, trying to keep him out of the catch frame is so difficult because not only does he have the body control, but Marvin is so strong. He's like, when he does give you a chicken wing, a little push off, you feel it. That's just how strong he is, man. And he didn't do any testing this offseason, and I commend him for it because his response was, I'm working on football things. And that's professional 100%. All that running around in shirts and shorts and running 40s and 3 cones, that's cool for the TV. But getting better on the field is what matters. I think this is an outstanding fit for what the Cardinals want to do.
Damien Parson, Draft Network, Locked On NFL Draft, joining me here, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. I agree. I mean, here's the thing. What really shifted me, aside from the Cardinals being young and not needing more draft capital with the trade back and everything, and this is something that's tough for Cardinals fans to understand, and it's because, the infusion of fantasy football and everything, and what Kyler Murray has done at times numbers-wise, especially when he, gets 80, 90 yards on the ground, throws for 300 yards and 4 total touchdowns. This is a run-first team. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a run-first team like winning teams are. And that's hard to stomach at times because it's like, well, now you got all the weapons. Now you got Trey McBride. Now you got, if you're running 60 plays, 65 plays a game, and you run the ball 35 times, that's still a run-first team. If you're able to run the ball with James Conner and you're able to set up the play action, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be open more times than not. Trey McBride will be up more times than not. And it makes the run game easier because now you don't have stacked boxes like you did last year with Josh Dobbs and whoever the hell was their number 1 wide receiver last year. So it's something that even if you're not going to see Justin Jefferson numbers from Marvin Harrison Jr., you don't need to, at least not right away. And I think that's something that's fascinating because you're right. Like, I'm geeked about this because it's a set and forget kind of situation for a rookie, which is what you don't always see, especially up to, I mean, unless it's an offensive tackle or something like that, there's a learning curve for skill position players. Now, let's pivot to Darius Robinson, number 27 overall, edge. This was looked at potentially as the biggest reach in the first round. There's a couple offensive linemen. I think it's kind of a pick your poison kind of thing with where offensive linemen went in the 20s. But my thought process, and tell me if I'm wrong, and I know you do, is he wasn't going to be there at 35, so you take your guy where you can take your guy. He can play all across the defensive line, which you need that flexibility. He's a good player. He started a damn charity with some of his NIL money. It's obvious the kind of player they're looking for on and off the field. But, I mean, it was a little bit of a reach, but a perfect fit for the Cardinals. Is that right?
Yes, 100%. And I feel like you said, he was not going to be there at 35. I did not foresee that happening. I know Carolina had him high on their list at one point. Granted, they moved up for their wide receiver, Xavier Leggett. Yeah, I just did not foresee him falling to 35. And even so, this is a guy in 2022. He weighed about 310, 305, and played defensive tackle. They said, hey, we need you to play edge in 2023. He dropped about 20 pounds to play edge and dropped to 285. And he still looked like an alien out there. Like, I saw him up close and personal at the combine. I mean, and not even just at the combine, at the Senior Bowl, having field access and being. And I'm gonna tell you one thing that I took away, not just the size. Some guys, I like to call them off the busters. They step off the bus and they look like football players, right? It's like, man, I remember going back to my high school days, and you see a guy step off the opposing bus, like, that guy's got to be good, right? That's what Darius Robinson looks like. It's like, yo, he's 6'5", 285, long arms. He's well built. It's like, yeah, he looks like a nasty guy on the football field. But I remember being up on the action during run drills and one-on-ones. and some of the heaviest hands that I've seen up close. A guy that could like ragdoll tackles when he wants to, right? He has an outstanding, maybe the best push-pull technique. That's kind of the reverse of what the old tackles do, which is the I don't know why I'm blanking on it right now, but their snatch trap, right? So it's like it's the defensive line's version of that, and his ability to stack guys quickly, extend his arm, hold them at the point of attack, pull them forward, and just shed them and displace them. There was a run situation where it was like handling double teams on the edge, where you're the strong side defensive end. You got to deal with a tackle and a tight end, and you're talking about parting the Red Sea. Like he attacked the tight end, separated from the tackle, and he's just sitting there for the running back. And I'm like, this dude is so physical. He's so strong. And I think that's where it's all about Jonathan Gannon telling him, this is where we want you to play. Do we want you to stay 285 and play strong side defensive end and then kick down to that 4-eye on passing downs? Great. Do we want you to add that 20 pounds back and become a true defensive tackle? You could do that too. At the end of the day, you need a guy that can get after it, and he's going to give you every single. His motor is outstanding. Like I said, he's got a good first step for a bigger guy, but that arm length, that power, the speed to power conversion, the ability to control blockers at the point of attack, stopping the run. I think he would be an ideal, understanding what you deal with. Like before you can make the playoffs. And I remember, my old mentor, who scouted in the league for years. He said, "Listen, you scout and you draft to win your division. That's how you get to the playoffs." And Darius Robinson, his ability against the run, whether at the point of attack, thinking about gap scheme and man down blocks, or slicing through the action on zone. Who runs zone in your division? All three teams. The Seahawks, the Niners are great at it with CMC. And now you got to deal with not just Kyron Williams in LA, but they got Blake Corum as well. That having a guy that has the first step quickness, the power, the arm length, the pad level to slice through, whether he's playing 2-eye or 3 or 4, slice through those blocks, get into, and I'll tell you when, as I played running back growing up, one thing we hate is to see the other team's colors flash before our eyes. Because it's like, all right, I gotta change my path now. And with a guy like Darius Robinson, man, I think there's pass rush upside for him, especially as an interior defensive lineman. But his ability against the run is where I'm really expecting Jonathan Gannon to be extremely excited about him.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you know who hits really hard also? Mac Wilson and Kazir White, who are going to be in the middle of the defense on blitz packages. It's going to make their job. It's like what Nolan Smith experienced in Georgia when they had that huge front where it's like, my job's easy, man. All these guys are making these holes for me to run through, hit the quarterback. Yeah, that's fantastic. And if that comes true, the Cardinals rebuild may turn into a playoff push a lot sooner than people gave them credit for, especially at the beginning of last season with the dire straits that look to be ahead. We're going to hit day 2 next. This is where the fun stuff begins. I'm going to ask Dame about Max Melton and why Monty Ossenfort would trade back knowing he would miss out on the top 2 corners by all accounts and draft Max Melton instead while picking up a 3rd-round pick. We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals with Dame Parson from Locked On NFL Draft and the Draft Network next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Yeah, we got to pause here for a sec. I talked to you about Monopoly Go. I've talked to you about it every day, and I know you're saying flag on a play. You already talked about it. I'm going to talk to you about it some more. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, so that's pretty sweet. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vault. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasures or robot pachinko machine. There's always something new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Lockon Cardinals, Alex Clancy, Ross Jackson. This is going to be a long podcast. I just want to let you know. So if you're listening to this one, our fearless leader for the Locked On NFL portion, Dame and I both have a lot to say, and it's going to be good, and I'm sorry. Okay, so day 2, this is where it gets fun, okay, because if it's like, okay, if Monty Osborne sticks and picks, it's probably going to be those 2 guys, and he's stuck, and it was those 2 guys. So they're sitting there at 35, and it's like, after 27, I'm like, the Cardinals move back up here? Like, do they want to snag a corner? Because, and you very well know this, there were like 8 first-round players in the second round that were still there because of the quarterbacks and the wide receivers that went early. And there was the run of the offensive lineman, but it was corners and like, it was insane. I'm like, oh, goody. Cardinals have 3/3 in a second. It's like, let's, some fireworks here. Monty Osborne decides to trade back again. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So, at this point, the Cardinals had drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and Darius Robinson, and the Cardinals trade back to 43 with Atlanta. And at that point, Cooper DeJean, who was looked at to go at 25 to Green Bay, everybody's like, he's going to Green Bay. And he didn't. And he was there out of Iowa. And Kool-Aid McKinstry was still there. Kamari Lassiter was still there. And oddly enough, those 3 went right before Max Melton at 43. Do you think Monty Ossenfort chose to trade back because he knew that was his guy and they could get a pick in the process? Or was this like ain't no way 3 corners going to go right before us? Or like a combination of the 2?
I think it might be a combination of the 2. I think he understood. All right, I think that it's a situation. A lot of times you see this with teams. Well, I think Jacksonville did that where they traded back in the round 1. Traded back in round 1. They were at pick like 17. Yeah. I think they traded back to like 22 or something like that. Yeah. And it was like, typically when teams have multiple guys kind of graded similar at the same position, they're like, you know what? If we can get an extra pick, I'm cool with the 3rd, 4th guy. If they're all kind of bunched and grouped together, right? If you had a cluster grade or graded cluster of cornerbacks, and it's like, this guy's better by a half a point. Okay, we're not losing much by taking the 4th guy. But I'm not saying that Max Melton was the 4th guy, but if you have a guys like bunched up like that, you're like, oh, you know what? I don't mind trading back. You know what I mean? I don't mind trading back, getting that extra 3rd, which they did, and everything like that. And Max Melton, again, he's physical guy that could play press man coverage. He could play off man, play zone, which if I remember correctly, looking at the numbers in 2023, 67% of Jonathan Gannon's coverage metrics were out of zone. He played zone 67% of the time in 2023, right? So this is a situation where you bring in a Max Melton. I'm interested to see if that number flips, because Max is a guy that can play press man, align it, and go to the line of scrimmage and disrupt timing, reroute guys. He can tackle from distance, trigger from space, trigger into space, and trigger downhill underneath routes. I think getting him, and then, understanding, like, you know what, man, like, we're good. Like, we're good here. Then, of course, doubling down with Elijah Jones, at 6'1.5", a long young man that has, like, good arm length and everything else. And it's like, man, I just love what I'm seeing from this situation, because I think both of those guys are starters and they both could play on the outside. Elijah Jones was an outstanding athlete, 42.5-inch vert, 10'11" broad, 4.44 in the 40. He was a standout at the Senior Bowl when he flew out there and he got onto the field. Outstanding in coverage. I remember playing, making plays on the ball, at the catch point, making it difficult for guys. Man, I really like watching him. So I think that was a big thing for him. He knew, like, they knew what their board looked like, and it's like, man, all right, do we stick and pick, or do we trade back and make sure we can get all the guys we're kind of circling in this day 2 range, right? Having 5 picks on day 2 is just crazy work. And it was just crazy to see. But to walk away with Max Melton, get Elijah Jones with the 90th pick on day 3 in the 3rd round. But and then transferring over to the offensive side of the ball, right? They went 2 defensive backs, then they went 3 straight picks in between there on the offensive side of the ball, Alex and Clance. Like, I had a feeling running back was going to be a pick. I had a feeling.
Me too.
But it was like, all right, who's it going to be? To get Trey Benson at pick 66, 6'1", 220, 4.39, can catch the ball. That not just like screens and dump offs. No, You turn on the tape, like this young man runs rail routes / wheel routes, and he tracks the ball down the field. Breakaway speed, and you talk about having a complement to James Conner that's going to bring more speed than James Conner, but still can run as physical and as hard as James Conner, right? And eventually takes the, is the heir apparent to that RB1 role. And Isaiah Adams, the guard out of Illinois, again, getting more physical. You brought in Jonah Williams, you have Paris Johnson, right? But you need to add more, talent to the interior offensive line, and with picking up Isaiah Adams, the big kid. This is a big young man. He's strong, strong-handed, and everything. I think I figured he would play more guard in the league than tackle that he did at Illinois. But 6'4", almost 320, almost 34-inch arms. I just think that this might be a plug-and-play starter as a rookie. He's got to take his lumps in camp and showcase that consistency, right? That consistent growth. I know some people were a little taken back by the Tip Raymond pick because he's such a underproductive receiving tight end. But I remember tweeting out about him before the draft. I'm like, watching him, I'm like, guys, this is one of the best blockers in the class at the tight end position. He was just underutilized as a receiver. It's not that he can't make plays as a receiver. Illinois had a horrible passing attack. And you know what I mean? It's just honest about it. The quarterback situation wasn't great. So it's like, all right, what do you do here? I expect, again, physical team. You said in the first segment, they're going to run the ball, right? Be run first. Come out and 12 personnel. Now, if I want to go to more pass-heavy sets, and I remember watching Tom Brady do this his whole entire career. They come out in heavy formations, force you into heavy formations, then they split you wide, and they go empty. And when you have Trey McBride, who is on the cusp of being that elite tight end, that next elite tight end, you can come out in 12 with 2 tight ends on the line. Kyler Murray can see some stuff defensively, call a check, and have Tip Raymond stay inside at the tight end spot. You can have Raymond stay at tight end, motion out Trey McBride into the slot as that big slot. You have Marv, you have Michael Wilson. You can still run the ball out of those sets because you can crack back, with McBride taking off a backer, toss sweeps to the outside. You could do a lot of different things. Slice, split flow action with him coming back into motion from the slot and from the nickel position or from the slot position in terms of Trey McBride, lead blocking, backside on the opposite side of the formation. There's a lot of creativity that I can dial up, and I know Drew Petzinger can dial up with these 2 tight ends just out of 12. So it's like they want to be physical. They got an outstanding blocker who has upside as a pass catcher as well to pair with their elite pass catching tight end. I just love what they were able to do day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. The Tip Raymond one, it reminded me, I was thinking about it. It was like, regardless of how bad Draft Day the movie is, I loved it, but regardless of how people thought about it, David Putney, because I GD feel like it, that was a Monty Ossenford because I feel like it pick.
Absolutely.
Because they could, and because he was one of the better options on the board at the time. Dame Parson, I'm going to give my thoughts at what he just said after the break, because we do have to go to break, and then we'll highlight a couple other players. The Trey Benson thing you said is interesting. I've got some things to say. That was excellent. Lockon Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Lockon Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win on your own right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment. Alex Clancy, Dame Parson at DP_NFL. Do you want to co-host Locked On Cardinals? Pretty much you're telling me they're going to win the Super Bowl. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on. It's only going to get better. When I told you last year, every dayers, I told you. And this isn't about me being right. This is about me, the repetition of me saying this constantly. What you're watching is a lot better than what the score or record indicates. Every week, the Cardinals were more prepared in week 1 against Washington with Josh Dobbs, who'd been with the team for less than 2 weeks, with a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, none of whom had held that position before, at any point in Cliff Kingsbury's tenure. And it wasn't close. It was different immediately. And when you have that stencil of serious football, playing for each other, all the cliches you want to use that are true in this instance, and you infuse talent and you infuse stardom and you infuse the right talent in the right spots, something can pop a lot faster than people think. Now, they have to do it. Marvin Harrison Jr. has to be good. Michael Wilson has to stay healthy. I talked on yesterday's show about how the Cardinals should probably sign another veteran wide receiver because of those things. There's so much uncertainty in the wide receiver room. It looks great on paper. Nothing's happened yet. So don't glamorize what hasn't happened yet. Now, when you talked about here, let me pull these up again because there were a lot of picks. So when you talked about Max Melton, when I watched some film, I knew his name, but I mean, I'm not as deep into this as you are. He likes to hit people, and that's what you said. They're physical. He's good against the run. He can play inside and outside. He looks at the quarterback too much. Sometimes that can be taught. His breakaway speed will only get better when he gets beat. Like, there are things, the issues he has can be fixed by NFL coaches and reps. And it's something that the Cardinals haven't experienced. Even Patrick Peterson, he was great for 7 or 8 years here. Didn't like to hit people. Wasn't a physical guy. And now all the Cardinals have on defense are dogs who will kill you. I mean, that's Nick Rallis. He's the hooded, the red hoodie, just sitting there like he's like an evil genius next to Jonathan Gannon. Now he's got some talent with Kazir White, who will take your head off, and Mac Wilson. Like, this defense is going to be insane. Okay. Now, pivoting into the rest with Trey Benson, this was my love. When I heard the name, I'm like, thank you. This is exactly the spot where the Cardinals need to draft talent to move James Conner into the LeGarrette Blount role. I've been waiting for this. 40%. Most important touches. Everything else, give it to the kid. Because James Conner needs to play 17 weeks this year and next year, and you need to lower his touches. It's great when he touches the ball. It's going to be 6 weeks. I call it getting Arian Foster. I know young people forget who Arian Foster was. He was the best running back we've ever seen. He was LaDainian Tomlinson for 4 seasons. But Houston didn't have any other offense besides Andre Johnson, and they ran him into the ground, and he was never the same. So that's my thoughts on what you said. I do want to talk about a couple other names here before we get out of here. So you mentioned Elijah Jones. The Cardinals don't need a cornerback one if they have 4 CB2s. They need a cornerback infusion, and they got it. Now, there's a couple names that I found to be, for lack of a better phrase, sexy picks. Okay, 2 of them, Xavier Thomas and Christian Jones, back-to-back 5th-round picks. Xavier Thomas was riddled with injuries at Clemson. He is a big dude off the edge. Tell me about him quickly, and then we'll pivot to what looked to be one of the steals of the draft in the Texas offensive lineman next.
Yeah, I absolutely love Xavier Thomas. Quick twitch, explosive, bendy around the edge. This is a guy who's going to play hard, high motor. And, just watching it, I was at his pro day. This is an explosive kid. This young man is explosive. Battled some injuries, like you said, but bringing him as a DPR off the bench, fresh legs in the 4th quarter, that's what offensive linemen hate. And I think that's what he's going to bring to this team. The Christian Jones pick I like a lot, mainly because I don't know how he fell this far, because his tape is good at right tackle. His tape was good. He showcased well done at the Senior Bowl back in February. But also, the main reason why I like this pick, you flip Paris to the left. You brought Jonah Williams in to play the right. You let Christian Jones sit behind Jonah Williams for a year or two, right? Then you got your starting right tackle for the future, the pair with Paris Johnson. This young man is good in the run game. He's strong-handed. Is he an outstanding athlete? No, I think he's a solid to sufficient athlete with decent foot quickness and lateral movement ability. But his bread is buttered in the run game, in my opinion. And I really appreciated how he would seal off defenders, create running lanes, even create cutback lanes for running backs who were quick enough to bounce runs outside from attacking the interior gaps, the interior rush lanes. I absolutely like what I've seen from him.
Yeah, and I've been trying to piece this together, and I haven't come up with the actual statement yet, so let's do it now. Howie Roseman is looked at as the mock draft darling for taking the big names that everybody's talking about. Oh, this is going to be a steal in the 1st round. Steal, if you can get this guy in the 2nd round, it's going to be a steal. And there's always 4 or 5 guys. Okay, Howie Roseman takes them all. So everybody looks at him as the genius GM, and to some capacity he is. They get away with absolute murder with who the players dropped to them. Jalen Carter, a couple of years ago, they moved up 2 spots to get. And then these 2 corners this year with Cooper DeJean in the second round. Monty Alsiford is the antithesis of that. He's the guy that has the Google phone and not the Samsung. He's the guy that has the thing that works. It's not flashy, but can be most effective, and you can get it at a lesser price. Whoa, that actually rolled off the tongue better than I thought it was going to do. Is that right? Like, do you? Because I mean, listen, you can get jacked up out after a draft, like, oh, the upside of this, upside of this. You really seem to be excited about rounds 1 through 5, and round 6 and 7, are dart throws. Like rounds 1 through 5, every guy you talked about, you make it seem like they can be impact makers pretty close to day 1 or in season 1.
I think so. I think, what I'm saying, especially most of those guys, of course, we talk about Christian Jones. He's probably going to have to sit behind, Jonah. But overall, just looking at this group, and I forgot a guy, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, safety out of Texas Tech, that 4th round pick. That young man is versatile. Talking about wearing different hats for his secondary. He could play split zones, split high safety. He could play single. He played some single high. He played nickel for Texas Tech. He's willing to run the alley. He's got good ball skills. I like this kid a lot, and I think what's so valuable is him learning from a veteran like Budda Baker. And matter of fact, we just talked about this on the recording of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. We were going through some of the sleeper defensive picks and DB fits and edge fits from the 2024 NFL Draft. And what Keith brought up, Arizona and the 3 DBs they grabbed, last weekend. What I loved, and we talked about it, we talked it through, was the potential of what Jonathan Gannon can do now. Because you think about having Jalen at one safety, right? You could put Dadrian at the other safety. You could turn Budda Baker into his version of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That hybrid safety nickel role that's going to blitz off the edge, that's going to be a run support guy, that's going to be outstanding in coverage. He could take the ball away. He's a trash talker. He's a tone setter. That's what Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was for him when he was in Philly before they let him walk into free agency. So getting a Dadrian, getting him and putting him in that secondary, in that safety room, if you don't feel comfortable with putting another corner out there in nickel situations, you can throw Budda Baker or Dadrian into that nickel spot and really be able to thrive, man. I just like what they've done, right? Some people didn't have the most home run names in terms of, man, that's a flashy pick, that's a sexy pick. Right. Sexy doesn't win football games. You know what I mean? Like, sexy does not win football games. It doesn't win Super Bowls unless the sexy thing is at quarterback and it's Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, that's when the sexy wins. You need to have a sustainable team. You need to have a team that can look the San Francisco 49ers in the face pregame and said, you punch me, we're punching you back. And I think that's what Monty Alsiford built in the 2024 NFL draft class, was a roster and a team that's going to be able to be physical against one of the more physical teams in the entire NFC.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's exactly right. I love it. And for those that are like, well, they have 10 rookies, how are they going to play everybody? That's how bad that roster was last year. They're going to be ready to roll in a controlled and safe environment, not on an island like, Marco Wilson and Byron Murphy and every rookie Steve Keim drafted pretty much was. Isaiah Simmons getting burned for 75 yards, and Raheem Mostert week 1 against Kyle Shanahan. They knew exactly where the weaknesses were. Yeah. This time, the Cardinals are building it properly with quote-unquote no-name veterans. They're going to be hoisting up these rookies to allow them to work in a safe space and grow and evolve together. And it's going to be incredible. Dame Parson at DP_NFL. Tell them where they can find you, man. Everywhere.
Oh, man. Of course. Locked On NFL Draft 5 days a week. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Definitely go hit the subscribe, automatic downloads. If you want to watch us on YouTube, Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube. The Draft Network scouting reports over there, doing some written pieces post-draft as well. As also go to the YouTube channel. We did all 32. We graded all 32 teams. We have videos for all 32 teams that we recorded while we were on site in Detroit at the actual event. So definitely go check that out at the Draft Network's YouTube channel. Yeah, we got a lot coming. Also, stay tuned for my own personal YouTube channel called The Scouting Room, where I'll be breaking down film, NFL, and college football film, being able to kind of point out key players that people aren't talking about, new fits to schemes, all the type of stuff like that. Just me getting into my scouting bag. So stay tuned and tapped in for all of that as well.
Boom. Dave Parson, new co-host of Locked On Cardinals as well after that one. Dame's so much fun, man. Thanks a lot. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals.
Sir.
I will talk to you tomorrow.